Welcome everybody. My name's Tim Graham of hotspotting.com.au, and today I'm delighted to be joined by my special guest for today's episode, Sallyanne Hartnell from Reflect Coaching. How are you, Sally?
I'm really well, thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Well, pleasure. Now, before we kick things off, for those who don't know Sallyanne, she's an award-nominated relationship and divorce coach, as well as having her own podcast, Reflect, Reclaim, and Liberate. Sally's passionate about changing the way couples experience divorce and reorganise their lives and their family afterwards. Now, Sallyanne, please don't take this the wrong way, but professionally, you must be the person that no one really wants, but unfortunately, a lot of people quite need your services these days. So, would that be a fair and accurate assumption?
That is fair and that is accurate. I'm quite used to being the person that nobody really wants to need, Tim. Yes.
Yeah. Now, I suppose it's probably a rather unusual topic for a real estate podcast to be talking about, divorce and relationship advice and things like that. But obviously, we hold so much real estate in our name. That's our wealth here in Australia. And of course, it becomes a big part of any separation now. So could you explain a little bit about what you do?
Well, just to reflect back to you that, yes, it is a huge part. Real estate almost always comes into a property settlement or a divorce negotiation.
Yeah.
Whether we own it outright, whether it's an investment property. So it's not so unusual for me to be involved with people like you dealing in real estate. In terms of what I do, is that what you asked me? I'm so sorry.
Yeah. What exactly is it that you do with helping navigate a divorce or a separation?
Yeah, well, I work with people who are still in a marriage, in a relationship, who are considering separating, or are feeling a little bit challenged, triggered. Things aren't as great as they would like them to be, right through to someone who's separated, navigating divorce, and even, as you said in that little intro, reorganizing their life afterwards. And I guess what I do is I fill the gap. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a therapist. I'm not your best friend. I'm not your mother. I can be your objective sounding board, I suppose, and support psychosocial emotional support. I also connect my clients with a community to scaffold them through. And, sometimes that is real estate professionals, people who work in real estate. Of course, it's going to be family law practitioners, financial advisors. So it's about meeting the client where they're at, meeting the human person who's navigating this really destabilizing life event, and making sure that they have exactly what they need in all areas.
Yeah. So no doubt you're saying it's not just, once you're getting to the point where you're already going through a separation, but it could even be in the should I stay or should I go mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually really like to work with clients from that point, so that if they do choose to exit a relationship, they choose to separate, it's done as kindly and as compassionately and in as low conflict a manner that can possibly be done. Because once a couple starts on a adversarial, high conflict kind of pathway through a separation divorce, it's really hard to get off. And so you can open conversations about separation, divorce, and I have clients who do that really gently and well with their soon-to-be ex-partner. It puts them in a better position to navigate things more amicably. It's not, it's not always going to work. It depends.
Well, no one sets out to have a dysfunctional relationship with their ex, but unfortunately, it does end up that way 9 times out of 10. Unfortunately.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't say 9 times out of 10. I think the media is great at presenting us with the really dramatic stories, and we don't hear a lot about the more positive, kinder, compassionate, more amicable separations and divorces. Part of the reason why I do what I do is because I did have a relatively amicable, peaceful, even friendly divorce. We were all 4 of us, my ex-husband, myself, my daughter, and my son, or our daughter and our son, were all at an event just last week where I spoke and our daughter spoke. So of course their dad was going to be there. So that's part of the reason why I do what I do, because we did manage to do it quite well and I didn't have or couldn't find the support that I really wanted. And also other people started to ask us, well, you two did it relatively well. How did you do it?
Mm.
So yes, you get divorced for good reasons, right? And a lot of the time that is communication's broken down. There's something not right in the relationship. That's why you're leaving. That's why you're separating, you're divorcing. But if we can dial down all that emotional reactivity and get to a point where you can communicate, you can discuss things, you can mediate, you can make decisions in the best interests of everybody involved, and they are, parenting decisions, financial decisions, who gets what decisions and how it's going to look going forward, then it doesn't always need to be as high conflict or as adversarial as the media likes us to believe it always is.
And I suppose to make it clear, you're not a relationship coach. You're not there to as a marital guidance coach or anything. You specifically are helping people in the time that they wish to separate. Is that?
I do actually meet people who are thinking about it. They're sitting on that should I stay, should I go fence.
Mm-hmm.
And some do actually re-engage with their partner.
Mm-hmm.
I do have Gottman therapy couples training, but my real passion is meeting those people when they choose or are told that the relationship's over. Okay, how can we untangle and unravel this relationship and put your life back together in a way that's not going to blow everything up?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, circling back to I suppose the topic of real estate and division of assets. In my mind, I just assume that this is left to the lawyers. So where do you operate in that space?
I operate in that space with clients deciding what really matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
What are their highest values? What are the drivers? What's driving some of their behavior and some of their decisions? So that my clients can go into mediation with whether it's lawyer-assisted mediation or with what we call a family dispute resolution practitioner, specially trained mediator who helps couples to do this very thing. So they can go in with a really clear idea of what's realistic, what is in their best interest, what is aligned with their highest values, and also thinking about the person on the other side. What are their drivers and what are their highest values? And therefore, what are they going to fight hard for?
Yeah.
And how can you meet them in that and everybody get a little bit of what they most want? So I will bring in, or my clients will connect with family lawyer, mediator, whatever it is that they need to have those hard discussions in a supported, scaffolded way.
Okay. So you can work with people one-on-one or as a couple. What take us through what that looks like?
I occasionally work with a couple, and not most often, always that is with a couple who have mutually decided that they are.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm not bringing that couple back together,
no.
but mostly I work with one or the other.
Yeah.
Sometimes my client won't openly disclose to their partner, their spouse, their wife, their husband that they're working with me, but sometimes they do, and just leading them right through that process.
Yeah. I mean,
on
inevitably, when people get to this stage, they may not have anticipated this getting to this point at all, and then of course not knowing, where do I turn to, what do I do? And as you said through your own story, you didn't have this type of service available to you at the time. So having a meeting with you, they understand what's I suppose about to happen and the best way to navigate it.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And nobody goes into a long-term partnership or a marriage expecting that it will end in divorce. And so when it comes, it can come as a bolt out of the blue. Someone comes home and says, "I'm sorry, darling, it's over, I'm leaving." Or more often it's that just gradual degrading, downgrading of your relationship, whatever. Nobody goes in expecting that it's going to end in divorce.
No.
And when it does, it's like, well, exactly as you said, where do I start? What do I do? It is overwhelming. If you've got kids, if you've got, property portfolios, you've got investments, you've got maybe you own a business together, dogs and holiday houses and all the things. It can be completely overwhelming. And as a parent, if you're also then supporting your children at whatever age, even adult children, through the change that's happening in their family, it's pretty overwhelming and overloading. So it's
Yeah.
I found it was, and I know clients come to me, it's like, I don't know what to do first. I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. Start
Awesome.
them.
So, I suppose, what are some of the challenges that individuals face regarding property division during divorce?
There's an assumption that property division will be at 50-50 split. Now, in family law, when we talk about property division, we're not just talking about real estate, we're talking about everything.
Yeah, all assets.
So that's one challenge that we come up against, that someone will expect that they'll get 50%. It's not always a 50-50 split. It's reliant upon a few key factors: what you brought into the relationship, the longevity of the relationship, who contributed what throughout the relationship, and non-financial contributions are also counted. So if you were the prime carer of young children, or you took time out from paid work to work in the business but you're not paid by the business, those sorts of things are considered as well as if there are children, who's caring for them the majority of the time. So there's a lot of factors that go into deciding a split. The other big challenge that I come up against, and this is particularly with female clients who are in heterosexual relationships, they desperately want to hang on to the family home.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a great financial decision or in their best financial interests going looking longer term. They want that stability for their family, for their children. So sometimes it's around, as I said before, looking at, okay, what are your highest values? What are your drivers? What's the driver behind wanting to keep that piece of real estate? Is that actually in your best interests next year, in 5 years' time, in 20 years' time? They're probably the two key challenges that we come up against with clients who are navigating a property asset settlement division.
Yeah. And superannuation would have to play into that as well. I mean, I think about my parents. They got separated when we were reasonably young, and I know one partner ended up, being quite well set up afterwards, and the other one didn't have super or anything like that to fall back on. Got the family home, but not much else after that, and then burdened with the 3 children to raise as well. I've seen firsthand the impact that a divorce not going well, the sort of effects it can have on someone. So being able to come to an understanding of not just a real estate asset, but superannuation has to come into play as well, no doubt.
Yes, superannuation is part of the total asset pool. It's treated a little differently, but there are ways that superannuation can be balanced out between a couple through a mediation process or with lawyers. And yeah, I often say to clients, you can't eat a house. If you come out with
the walls.
that house,
Yeah.
and you've got no income or no income generating assets, and you've got nothing in your super, then you're putting yourself in a precarious, potentially putting yourself in a precarious financial position. So what I really love to do with my clients, in fact, I do it with all my clients, is we start at the end. We talk about, okay, how does life look for you in 5, 10, even 20 years' time? Is actually holding on to that piece of real estate in service of the life that you want to be living in 20 years' time? Maybe it's not, maybe you are better off downsizing. I mean, personally, I didn't downsize, but I went from a very old, a beautiful 1920s home that needed a massive renovation, and we bought it to do just that as a couple. And I looked at it and went, I don't want to do the renovation. I don't want an old house,
I think just having a second set of eyes on this really helps, because, as you say, you can be so connected to that family home that you've raised the kids in, and it was the marital home for a long time, that maybe holding on to is not necessarily in your best interests. And certainly from a financial perspective, you could be in a better position by selling it and getting into something that's more suitable.
Absolutely. I've seen it many, many times with clients of both genders and all family makeups, that downsizing and having something that's much more manageable and easier to fund, easier to heat, easier to cool, all the things.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I can really see just the benefit of having, an objective lens on it from somebody else. It would be very valuable.
Yeah, it's just pointing out your blind spots too. As I said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And having coached many, many clients through it, I can say, well, this experience, I can explain this happened or this happened. The other thing too, that, you mentioned the emotional connection to the home, that can also be experienced in the flip. The
Yeah,
emotional,
exactly. The negative side of it.
like, I just want to get out of here. There are too many memories. There's too much. Yeah. There's too much that I don't want in terms of the emotional connection to this particular piece of property.
Yeah. Yeah, there's certainly emotional baggage that comes with it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So now it all makes sense. We've gone through and you've supported people through the divorce, but we've divided assets. Everybody's set up. The next question: what do I do from here? Because I've had many a time customers come to me and say, "I've just been through a separation. It's finally sorted, and it's taken years, but now I need to get myself back on track." Where do you get involved from that point?
It's a similar process, Tim. It's, okay, where do you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years' time? What do you need to know? Who do I need to connect you with? Do you want to invest in property? Do you want to, hopefully you don't want to spend it all traveling and gambling all the way. Really strongly encourage that not to be your chosen path. But so it's a similar process. Also, if a client comes at that point in time and they've got kids, they're still going to be connected in some form with their ex, with the other parent. So trying to scaffold them, upskilling them, teaching them, guiding them on communication with someone that, perhaps you'd rather not ever see again. Well, you've got kids, you're going to bump into them, or you're going to have to negotiate and discuss with them. So,
there's even co-parenting arrangements that need assistance to guide through.
Yeah. And there are lots of levels of that, of course, right? You can have a completely amicable, free-flowing arrangement where kids come and go as suits everybody. There's nothing written down to, just a basic written down parenting plan that's shared between the two parents. Next level parenting orders, so it depends on the couple and the family, how much support they need. There are other professionals that sometimes come into when it's just completely, the couple themselves are completely unable to communicate or make just even basic decisions about what the kids eat or where they go to school. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I was going to ask you about, and just in relation to, and you may not know these numbers off the top of your head, so I'm not going to hold you to them, but I know, through reading some statistics on divorce and separations, from 1976 or something, they peaked, and then they actually started to really drop away up until around 2020. And then somewhere around COVID, and probably for obvious reasons, there was a bit of a spike. Has that continued post-COVID?
It spiked, and there's a couple of reasons why it did. Yes, COVID, we all saw, everybody who works in this space just saw people's relationships breaking down.
Imploding.
If it was just like, do I really want to be, I don't want to be locked in a house with you, let alone spend the rest of my life with you. So let's get out of it. The other reason it peaked, or the other contributing reason it peaked, was because the court system changed a little bit. And in answer to your questions, have we seen it continue? I think we're seeing the tail end of not the tail end of the peak, but the effects of lockdowns particularly across Australia, and I'm going to say especially in Victoria. I think we're still seeing the fallout of that. People have come out and like, I managed the lockdowns, I managed all that, and now I think I'm really done.
Yeah.
The statistics were pretty startling, actually.
What about trends? Are you noticing any, new trends in separations or any good news stories? I mean, it's always the, the bad news stories, as you say, that make the headlines. But is there any good news trends or anything that you're seeing?
I think over the time that I've been working in this space, so let me go one step back. So my divorce was finalised in 2012. So 2010, I'm looking for the support and the support that I provide, as well as what we call a collaborative practice. So where the couple come in, we have lawyers, we have financial neutral, we might have mortgage brokers involved, everybody, it's a team approach to unraveling a relationship and unraveling a marriage. That didn't exist back then. And so lovely, well, the supportive great trend that I'm seeing is that that's much more accessible, much more available, much more widely spoken about, so that people who are separating, divorcing, actually know that there are other options. You don't have to just go to the lawyer up, fight each other out between the lawyers. There are other options. So that's been a great trend. Perhaps a not so great trend that we're seeing a fair bit of is lots of people who are, out of necessity, needing to remain living in the same house, but separated under one roof. Cost of living, housing prices, rental prices are such that it is difficult for some couples, some families, to fund two homes in whatever shape or form that takes. So I think over the last probably 2 years, we've seen a lot more of that happening. Now, it's fine if you can be amicable and you're safe to be in the same home. And when I say safe, yes, I mean physically safe, also emotionally safe, financially safe. But for some people, it's not really safe. And even if it is safe, it's not ideal. It's really difficult. So there's the good, and then there's the not so good trend.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, we're in a housing crisis here in Australia at the moment, and I'm sure that peak in divorce has contributed to that. You've got couples that are living in one house and that becomes two. So, I know a large cohort of new renters out there are people trying to find single dwellings, single people that have found themselves needing rental accommodation in their later years, which is really difficult, and especially in a market like we're in at the moment.
Yeah. And I find too that a number of clients, a number of people that I'm just talking to or in communication or within my community are choosing what we call a bird nesting arrangement, where the children and one parent remains, or the children remain in the family home and the parents alternate moving in and out. And they're not, when the parent is not in the family home, they're not necessarily in a rental. They might be living in somebody's, I know one who lived in a caravan in the back of her parents' house, sharing a spare room somewhere, Airbnb. So there are creative ways that we can support families to navigate it, but it's not always ideal.
Yeah. And it's obviously a situation you try to avoid at all costs, but
Stay married. Provided it's happy.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Well, look, we always like to finish off on our podcast is usually just some tips. If people were in a position where they're contemplating staying or going, what are some tips that you would give them? And also, if somebody did want to reach out and have a chat to you, what would they expect to go through as far as discovery and things like that?
Yeah, sure. Tips. Start how you would like it to end. If you really, really want a high conflict separation, divorce and property settlement, that's the way to start. But my red hot tip is go gently. And if you're the one who's deciding and leading, allow your soon-to-be ex-partner the time to catch up. If you're already out, but they still think the relationship is fine or you're all working on it, allow them the time to catch up. Don't lawyer up if you don't have to, but do get some generalised legal advice so you know what's coming, you know what to expect. Build your team consciously. And I always say to my clients, build the paid members of your team, but the unpaid members, the unpaid members, friends, family, maybe colleagues at work or HR, EAP providers through work, and then build your paid team or your paid team, but make sure that you're choosing them aligned with the type of divorce that you want to have, high conflict, low conflict, and with practitioners who have similar values to you and who will listen to your values. Even if you go to a family law practitioner, make sure it's someone who will listen to you and who will take on what you're saying about the way you want to divorce, and also they'll call you out when need be. They're probably my top tips.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I recommend to anybody, whether it's financial planner, mortgage broker, buyer's agent, don't just interview one and stick, interview multiple and see who gels well with you.
Yep. And with separation and divorce, the other tip I think is don't listen to all the, oh my God, stories like, oh my God, this happened to this person that I know and it was terrible. It doesn't actually have to be like that. Yes, sometimes,
I think everybody comes at you with all these warnings and things like that. I mean, obviously listen to them, but at the same time, as you said, if you're after an amicable separation, you can go about it in an amicable way.
Exactly. So build your team and get educated, basically, are those two tips. And if people want to reach out to me, search my name, Reflect Coaching. I do offer a free introductory call because I'm not for everybody, but that just gives us both an opportunity to explore whether what I do is what somebody wants. The other place to land, of course, is, as you said in the introduction, my podcast. There's lots of information there, and people can reach out and connect with me via the show notes of the podcast.
Amazing. Well, that's Sallyanne Hartnell from Reflect Coaching. You can also catch her podcast at Reflect, Reclaim and Liberate. Sallyanne, thank you very, very much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed the chat, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it.
Thanks, Tim. I hope people don't ever need me, but at least they now know that the service exists. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sallyanne.